Hi guys, so this is Chika, and welcome to Genius Sales Podcast, where we have conversations with salespeople. We have Mahmood here, and he's a salesperson at Keep. So we just want to ask him a few questions and learn his processes, and hopefully it will help us to get better as salespeople. Welcome, Mahmood.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ika. Well, super happy to be here. Super excited. I've been always into sales, and when you reached out to me about the podcast, I wanted to jump on the opportunity. I took a little time just to understand, but I'm super excited to be here and eager to learn and share as well.
Awesome, awesome. So, I want to start with your sales strategies. What is one strategy or technique that you think has helped you, have worked for you in the past and currently that you think others can adopt?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing that I learned when I started sales was you can hard sell a product. So when I say hard sell a product, you cannot go out to someone who has, let's say, a buffet of pens and you offer them another pen and say, hey, this one's going to be better than the rest of them. It doesn't work that way. What does work is you try to understand pain points, you try to understand solutions, and you try to find a match. So the one thing that I've always done on my side is focus on solution selling, which is primarily finding pain points, finding what works with people, and then the other thing that I do is I try to be human throughout the entire process. The one stigma that's attached to salespeople that I've seen that when we get calls from different people as well, it's always trying to shove product, trying to just fit the other person into the meeting room, just trying to get someone to look at what they have instead of actually focusing on what it could solve. So the strategy that I've always used and I always stay by is find a pain point, match the solution. If there is a pain, if you can provide a solution, stick with it. If there isn't, have the courage to say no, because you're going to be wasting each other's time if you don't. So that's always worked for me. It saved me time. It's given me the power to disqualify, qualify people faster, which essentially plays a big part in the way I strategize my days as well.
I like that, and it makes a lot of sense. Sales is just basically a pain point or a problem, and then a solution, and it comes together. So when there is no pain point and you're bringing a solution, there's no match. It will not work. So I agree totally with that about finding out, qualifying, verifying if there's really a pain point before you could bring a solution. So one thing about sales, you've been a salesperson for years. There are always challenges in sales. There are always problem solving is one skill every salesperson has to learn or improve on. So, would you want to share a few challenges you faced over the years and how you were able to figure them out or solve them?
Absolutely, absolutely. So one of the challenges I face, and I feel like you could probably throw this in a room full of salespeople and they've faced this as well, is picking up the phone. Learning how to pick up a phone and actually having a conversation. So by nature, my entire childhood, my adult life, I've been an introvert. So I'm naturally inclined to staying in my comfort zone. If it gets difficult, put on a blanket, just shut everything out, live that way. So one of the most hardest challenges that I had to face was picking up a phone, hearing a voice on the other side, and then actually trying to have a conversation with them. I know they're not my friend. I know they're busy. I know they're CFOs, CEOs, VPs, and I have to find a way to actually figure out what they need to understand and what I want to present. So one of the instances that I had that actually allowed me to get into sales is this is over 5 years ago, and this was one of the first times I picked up a phone. And when I picked up that phone, I had no idea what was going to happen. I was terrified. I picked up the phone, it started ringing. Each beep, beep, I could hear it echoing through my entire skull. And one of the things that I was afraid of, which naturally everyone is rejections, questions, how will I answer them? And then maybe the lead's having a bad day and I just happen to interrupt them at one of the worst times that's possible. One of those instances, I pick up a phone, I call the person, not their best day, probably fought with their spouse, kids didn't listen to them, or something of the sort has happened. And I'm one of the worst people to call at that time. So I call them and I start talking to them. And I didn't know how to do sales here. So I call them and I say, hey, this is Diam. I'm reaching out from this company. We do this, 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 this. And that person just, he takes a moment. I think he was trying to breathe and maybe reduce some of that anger that I might have brought out. And he just says, hey, listen, just stop doing this. And he cuts the call. And now I'm thinking to myself, okay, what did I do? Did I interrupt this person in the middle of a workday? What happened here? I'm completely in the unknown. The one thing I did here though was I went to a very close person who's also in sales as well. I went to them and I shared this experience. They only said one thing. They said pick up the phone again, make that call again. Find another person, make that call again. What they were trying to tell me was until I built confidence around actually picking up the phone, being able to open myself up to rejections, to people saying no, people having bad days, I will not be able to get a conversation started. I won't be able to get through to people. So they encouraged me to keep picking up the phone, so one of the things that I would do on my side, like how I would strategize and I would learn from this is in my head, I would make situations where I would feel like I can bring these words to my mouth and actually say them to the person. But when I would hear that phone ringing, all of it was gone. So what is essentially what that picking up the phone again and again and again started doing was it started building this bridge that my brain could take to my mouth, and I could feel my words coming down, and it made it easier with every single call I made. So the one thing that I learned and how I handled a challenging situation like that was I kept on picking up the phone, kept on making mistakes, kept on failing, pushed, and eventually I reached the point which was which is where I became comfortable in giving people I don't even know calls and then just striking a conversation. So that was one of the hardest challenges I faced because I feel like it was a make or break where a rejection could just completely finish someone's career. But it actually challenged me, it pumped me, it excited me to find out ways on how I could learn better. And then just again, having the confidence to pick up that phone, building that confidence, and then it started, the puzzle started falling into pieces. So
Makes sense.
that's what I did. Yeah.
I like that. Like that. Trying again and again and again. Keep doing it, right? Consistently, rinse, repeat, do it again and again, and over time you get the confidence. You get more comfortable speaking on the phone. I remember the first time I made a cold call. I was like, I didn't even know what to say or what to do. Sometimes I remember in the early days, someone would pick the call and I would just be blank. I don't know what to say, and I'll just drop the call. And then
Yeah.
over time, I try again, and even sometimes I'll miss my lines, and the call is all ringed, and I'll just try again. So I love the fact that you were always willing to give it another shot, and another, and another, and another, and helps you build confidence. An area I want to learn from you is around career growth. What are the skills? What are some things you've done or some habits you've built over the years that has helped you to, and get more opportunities?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that I've always done, I still do to this day, is I keep a very open mind and I'm always trying to absorb as much as I can when I walk into a room. So, and this is very, I don't usually, so I usually say this to everyone. I'll say it here as well. I try to seek out crowds and people where I am the dumbest person in the room.
Oh,
And I
nice.
actually like doing that because when I leave that room, I am far better than how I entered it. So that's something I'll always seek out in my life. It is a passion of mine to learn from people, to learn from systems, to learn from functions, to learn from motions, and understand. So I've always tried finding ways that I can absorb more, surround myself with people that inspire me, that are doing half my age, that are doing amazing things out there. I always try to reach out to them because one of the worst things that will happen here is actually two of the things that can happen. One, they don't reply. Two, they reply and they actually strike a conversation with me. So in both cases, I'm learning more. If they don't reply, I'll A/B test my way of reaching out to them again. I'll reach out. If they reply, great. I get to learn from what they're doing. So be a sponge is what I've always done, and that's led me to amazing places in my career. And this is something that I always get asked in interviews is when I'm usually switching over to a different position, I try to go in for something closer to entry level. And there's a specific reason why I do that. I'll take a pay cut, no worries. What I would not do is if I jump onto a position where I'm unfamiliar with how the business's foundation is set up, which is what I believe is entry level people are able to do. Let's say an SDR, BDR is able to do. I will never understand the building blocks of that business. So if I see myself growing in a specific business, I want to be part of the foundation instead of just another layer on top. So I want to build it from the bottom. It'll take some time for sure, but it's something that's always worked for me. And I've always been very, very open and transparent about starting from the entry point and then making my way up. Because I feel like I can, one, show my progression, two, show that I'm actually committed and I want to learn from people above me and people around me, and then get myself up to that position. So for me, this is how I take the steps of career. So absorb, learn at entry level, present those skills at a higher level, build a foundation on what you want to be, like set your goal and get there eventually. So that's always worked for me.
Makes sense. Fantastic. So, sometimes when you learn or when you keep learning, like you said, being a sponge, some of the things you learn it might not come in handy at that point in time, right? So I've had situations whereby I learned something, I couldn't implement that knowledge immediately, but along the line, over the months or years, that particular skill I've learned or that knowledge I've learned, I've seen myself applying it without even knowing. So I agree 100% about being open to learning, always learning, and looking out for ways to apply them. Now, let's talk about some core skills, right? What are some core skills you think maybe someone starting out as a BDR or contemplating as a BDR, moving into account executive or maybe sales leadership? What are some core skills you think that person should learn or that person should keep working on improving?
Yeah, absolutely. So the one of the core skills that I think BDRs need to understand, SDR BDRs is, and this is, so I'm a fan of this, is cold calling. They need to pick up the phone. You can't make the day work. You can't make the meetings happen. You can't book people in if you're skipping out calling people. Find a way to build confidence around picking up the phone, call them. That's going to be your best bet. It's going to help you qualify people. Getting the confidence to do that, absolutely an essential skill. The other is either have skin made of steel or just learn to be okay with rejection. So it's going to come. The amount of no's you hear in a day, any salesperson hears in a day, it's far greater than the amounts of yeses you hear in a day. So it's something you have to be okay with. For sure, do that. Like learn to be okay with rejection. Treat it as just gamify it. So treat it as okay, I lost this battle. On to the next one. I'll get a better sword, a better shield. I'll fight again. I'll go again. One of the things that I personally do is a unique skill that I think everyone should do, or a quality that everyone should have, is build yourself a dashboard, track your metrics, see what's working. Go back to your first call, visit your next call, visit the call a week after that, see what changed that might have potentially gotten you a meeting then if it didn't in the start. So tracking how you're progressing is very important. So having the skill to track your abilities is essential. Again, and this would tie in with listening to your talk tracks, listening to your call recordings, having the quality to actually be accountable, holding yourself accountable on that specific part, and just reaching out. So reaching out to your calls, understanding them again. And then the last one, which I think, given the change and everything that's coming in, be creative with your outreach. Don't just be a machine. You have to figure out ways to stand out of the crowd. Again, the type of people we call, they're busy. They're getting a bunch of these calls in a day. It'll be very difficult for them to remember your name unless you stand out. So figure out creative ways to stand out. Maybe use different platforms to conduct outreach. Learn more about your person. Give them a call when it makes sense. But yeah, a skill to have here is, just creativity. It goes a long way, and people actually like it as well. So the change of pace, the change of tonality, it helps you, one, decrease the sales pressure and get to the person as well. So in my side, these are essential.
Awesome. You said something around building a dashboard. Are there some tools, some free tools you could recommend to anyone on how on building dashboard?
So that's actually great. So one of the best free tools that I think everyone is probably familiar with is just use Google Sheets, right? Just track what you can,
Yeah.
and this is free, so it's definitely more easier to do. Track what you can, learn a little bit of formulas here and there, just so you can figure out what's going on there. And on the other side, if you have the ability, if your company has the budget, there are a few specific ones that I've really enjoyed using in my career. Salesforce, Salesloft, fan of both of them. HubSpot, great CRM. I recently got introduced to Nooks as well, which is phenomenal as a dialer. I wasn't aware of it,
Great
but
dialer.
amazing dialer. Yeah,
Yeah.
the ability to parallel dial is amazing. I didn't even know about that. I'm sold. Nooks is an amazing software for
Yeah.
sure.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And then, so just using these platforms, I think it's great using technology and tools to, build your own way of reaching out to people. Amazing ways. People are doing one of the craziest things now. They got campaigns running, different
Yeah.
softwares. Great way.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we can mention sales, like we can make our sales operations efficient without working with these tools. I think it makes the work
Agreed.
more enjoyable, saves us time. For example, the parallel dollars, right? I think if you've not used a parallel dollar before, you understand its importance. It's difficult for you to go beyond $60 most times every day because you're dialing manually. You dial one number, another number, another number, another number. It's time consuming. But when you salespeople need to be receptive, adopt
Hmm.
sales tools, be willing to experiment them. Of course, we don't want too much tools that you're confused. You want to have a reasonable number of tools so that you
Hmm.
don't get
Hmm.
overwhelmed. But
Yeah.
adopting these tools, using them, makes your work faster, it gets you more results, it makes you more efficient, and you can buy back some time you could use for yourself and some other things. So yeah, I appreciate you mentioning some of those tools, the CRMs that
Hmm.
like I told you about us running some boot camps, sales boot camps to help people start out a career in sales. One of the things we teach them is using a CRM. Some people that have zero knowledge in sales, they create an account on HubSpot, finish up the 14-day trial just to get their hands dirty. These are things that salespeople need to be able to start using, start implementing. Comment to your organization if you
Yeah.
see a sales tool and you think there's a budget for it, recommend. It shows that you're adding value, you want the company to grow and stuff like that. Thanks for sharing that.
100%.
Now I want us to move into building relationship, right? Sales is relationship driven. What's your approach to building and maintaining strong relationship with prospects and also maybe existing customers as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's essential. So if you're able to build that relationship, one, you're obviously networking, you're increasing your net worth. And the other thing is the stickiness of the product, it
Yeah.
increases because the person selling or the person providing the solution is now tied to the prospect and the person. They're now tied together, and then the product comes second. So it's amazing to build relationships. One of the things that I personally like doing is I love listening to people. So, like I mentioned, I'm always a fan of absorbing. One of the things that I always put in my conversations with customers, leads, prospects, anyone, is what their industry is like at the moment and what the product that I'm personally providing or what we're providing or how it impacts their business. If there even is a place that it impacts it, if there's a way that it creates more opportunities for growth. So I like to ask questions that are somewhat related to the product itself, and if they're not, then the other side that I always focus on is let's go back 10 years. So let's say I'm reaching out to someone who's been in business for 20 years. One of the questions that I love asking is, hey, if we go back 20 years, what's something that you would change to potentially consider a product like this? Or what's something that you feel a direction would make sense if you were ever to look into a product like this for yourself? So this is me defining that product. And if it doesn't make sense, I will always still find a way to talk to the person just so I can understand what their industry is like. Again, listening to people, asking those questions, asking meaningful questions, not just surface level ones. Asking meaningful questions about their business shows that you care, goes a long, long way. They'll remember your name, they'll remember your email, they'll look out for it. If it goes into spam, they'll drag it out and put it in the inbox. So just the ability to listen to someone and allowing yourself to listen and letting them know that they're being listened to, I think it creates a big impact and goes a long way. So for me, I've always focused on listening, decreasing sales pressure by doing that, asking those relevant deep questions again to build conversation, even if it's not around the product. It can be around what their industry is. It'll give me insight when I'm calling the next person because I'll know the industry and the pains that they had and see if there's relevance there.
Fantastic. You know, the importance of active listening cannot be overemphasized. It's super important. And as salespeople, we have to listen more and talk less, because if you keep talking, you just end up assuming what's not existing in the company. So,
Mhm.
but when you, like you said, ask questions, the right questions to uncover pain points and understand where the company is at the moment, and then you listen, right? You listen and hear what the, you don't just listen to respond. You know, there's a difference
Yeah,
between listening to respond, but listening to understand what the prospect is trying to communicate. I think that that's a huge. It's a skill. Not everybody knows how to listen. So sales will need to be
it's
intentional about listening, actively listening, and letting the person know you're listening. Right when the person talks, you can paraphrase, share what you
mhm.
understood from that. It shows that you actually listening, not just keeping mute. And I love that. So let's conclude with advice. Do you have any advice you could share with, number one, those starting out in sales, and number two, those already in sales are looking to improve and get to the next level?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So those starting off in sales, 100% do it. You will learn life skills, you will learn people skills, you will learn all type of these advanced skills. But we used to call them soft skills when we were growing up. We still call them soft skills, but I think they're so important in life. They get overlooked. On my side, I've never used Pythagoras' theorem, but I've used solution selling. I've used a bunch of other courses that I've done on sales, more so now. But I mean, it has its own place for sure. Just a funny thing that I'm putting out there. But with sales, get into it for sure. Even if you don't know it at all and you plan on having a business one day, learn sales. Learn the basics of sales because if you know how to do sales, you'll know how to market your product, you'll know how to find the people that need it, you'll know how to find intent, you'll know how to find your ICPs, and that's essentially what's going to drive your business as well. So people in sales, make the jump, start calling people, start picking up the phone, get creative with your outreach. Worst outcome is they drop an F bomb or they just close the call right then and there. But that's the worst that they'll do. That's the worst that can possibly happen. Learn from it, figure out ways, move it around, see what's working, what isn't working, A/B test. And then for people that are advancing in sales, one of the things that I love to do is I love to challenge myself. So surround yourself with people that are doing better. Surround yourself with people that you feel are the next step for you, and then sit with them in a room, have them listen to your call, have an extremely open mind when you give them the call to be able to receive that feedback and then be able to develop on it. So criticism, constructive criticism, work on that, take information in. I feel like the best way to progress and the best way to progress fast is to attach yourself with someone, call them your mentor, learn from them, repeat what they're doing, and you'll eventually start understanding it and it'll become part of your nature. Like you mentioned in the start as well, you might learn a skill that you won't use at that time, but later down the line when you suddenly start using it, you might reminisce and think, I learned this skill 5 years ago from one of the people that I was following. So and this is something that I actively do is I look at the person that I want to become, find them in the company, turn them into my champion, and then focus on what their day looks like, build the way that they're progressing, and then obviously add my flavor on top of it so that it can become a part of my personality and it sets me apart from what they do and it adds my touch in there as well. So, set your levels, achieve them, track them. If you feel like you can't reach them in a day, give yourself a week, give yourself a month, give yourself a year. And I think this is true for everyone.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you sharing this thing. Thank you for coming on the show, and look forward to having you next time. You're welcome.